The Galactic Academy was the most prestigious training center in the universe, where only the best young warriors, scientists, and strategists from every species could study. Inside its massive halls, future leaders of the galaxy trained in warfare, strategy, and technology. For the alien students, this academy was a place to prove their species' superiority. For the handful of humans who managed to get accepted, it was a constant battle for respect. And for one human child, Ethan Carter, it was a place filled with mockery and humiliation. Ethan sat at his desk, ignoring the loud laughter coming from the celery group across the training hall. The reptilian aliens stood tall, their muscular frames covered in armored scales, their sharp fangs exposed in wide grins. One of them, Vakor, slammed his clawed hand on Ethan's desk, shaking the metal surface. "Tell me, human," he hissed, "why do your kind even bother coming here?" The other aliens chuckled, watching. Ethan, calm and quiet, simply looked up. "We come here to learn," he said. "Same as you." Vakor let out a sharp bark of laughter. "Learn? Your kind is weak, small, slow. You are insects compared to us." Ethan stayed silent. That only made them laugh harder. Another alien, a blue-skinned Evaxi, smirked. "Maybe we should show him what real warriors are like." Ethan sighed and closed his notebook, standing up. He was smaller than most of the students here, his brown hair slightly messy, his uniform loose on his thin frame. He looked like nothing compared to the giant, battle-ready aliens around him. But his mind was something else. Combat training was next. Ethan and the other students entered the massive battle dome, where holographic targets, weapons, and combat droids were waiting. Today's exercise was simple: defeat a combat drone in 1 minute. The first to go was Vakor. The XLR war prince rushed forward, claws flashing, tearing through the droid in just 18 seconds. The watching students cheered. The next students followed, each species showing off their strength, speed, and agility. Some used plasma blades, others used raw brute force. Then it was Ethan's turn. The moment his name was called, a wave of laughter spread through the hall. "A human." One alien sneered. "This will be funny," another chuckled. Ethan ignored them and stepped into the arena. The drone activated, its glowing red eyes scanning him. It moved fast, faster than any human should be able to react. But Ethan didn't move. He just stood there. The drone charged at him. Gasps filled the arena. Was he frozen in fear? But at the last second, Ethan simply stepped aside. The drone missed. Another charge. Another simple dodge. No wasted energy. No panic. Just simple, perfect movements. The aliens in the crowd stopped laughing. "What is he doing?" someone whispered. The drone adjusted, trying to adapt. But Ethan already understood how it worked. Every move it made was predictable. Every attack had a pattern. With one quick step, Ethan grabbed a loose panel on the drone's side and pulled. Sparks flew as the machine shut down instantly. Time taken, 42 seconds. The room was dead silent. The instructor checked the drone, frowning. "He disabled its central motor," he muttered, "without damaging it." Ethan stepped out of the arena. He walked past Vakor, who was staring at him with narrowed eyes. Ethan didn't smile. He didn't smirk. He just walked away. Later that night, in the Academy's dormitories, the aliens whispered among themselves. He didn't fight. He didn't have to. Vakor slammed his fist on the table, cracking it. He just got lucky. Next time, I'll crush him myself. But deep down, he knew there was no luck involved. And for the first time in his life, Vakor felt something strange. A feeling he never thought a human could make him feel. Doubt. Ethan sat alone in the Academy's data lab, his eyes fixed on the glowing holographic screen in front of him. Lines of alien code scrolled past at high speed, complex formulas, and blueprints flashing in the dimly lit room. The Academy's training exercises meant nothing to him. Strength, speed, combat, they were outdated concepts. Wars were not won by muscles. They were won by minds. Across the academy, in the war simulation chambers, Vakor and his team were engaged in another battle drill. The simulation projected a realistic battlefield, complete with alien ships, energy shields, and advanced weapons. The students had to command their fleets, using strategy to outmaneuver their opponents. Vakor loved this game. His aggressive combat style had always worked. He crushed enemy ships with brute force, overwhelming them with superior firepower. But then something unexpected happened. The enemy fleet, a simulated force controlled by the Academy's AI, moved in an unnatural way. Instead of retreating or defending, it outmaneuvered him perfectly, dodging every attack. One by one, Vakor's ships were destroyed. His perfect record shattered. The alien prince slammed his fists on the control panel. This is impossible. Then the screen flickered, and a single message appeared. Try harder next time. Vakor's blood boiled. He knew exactly who had done this. Ethan leaned back in his chair, watching the simulation results on his personal screen. He had hacked the system without being detected, rewritten the AI's response patterns, and turned it into an unbeatable strategist. Not because he wanted revenge, because he was bored. He had already learned everything the Academy could teach him. Its simulations, weapons, and battle strategies were primitive compared to the ideas forming in his mind. But there was one problem. He had no resources, no funding, no lab, no tools. The Academy's best technology was still centuries behind what he needed. And then an idea struck him. The next morning, Ethan walked into the Academy's restricted research center. A security droid scanned him. Unauthorized access is prohibited. State your business. Ethan held up a forged clearance chip, one he had personally programmed. The droid scanned it, hesitated for a moment, then stepped aside. Ethan entered the vast laboratory, filled with alien weapon prototypes, classified blueprints, and experimental AI cores. This was exactly what he needed. He moved quickly, scanning the files, absorbing every bit of data he could find. He wasn't stealing weapons, he was learning how they worked. Because soon, he would build something far more dangerous. Across the Academy, Vakor was furious. The humiliation from the simulation failure still burned inside him. Every alien in the Academy had seen him lose, and Ethan Carter was the reason. Where is he? Vakor growled, storming through the halls. His claws twitched with rage. A fellow Acceleri pointed toward the restricted research center. He went in there. Vakor stopped. That part of the Academy was off-limits. Even he wasn't allowed inside. How had a human managed to break in? His anger turned into suspicion. This human was not just clever. He was dangerous. Ethan worked fast. He copied blueprints, analyzed power systems, and memorized weaknesses in the galaxy's most powerful weapons. The aliens believed their ships, shields, and energy cannons were unmatched. But Ethan could already see flaws in their designs. With just a few modifications, he could create something lethal, something that could change the balance of power forever. But then, footsteps echoed down the hallway. Ethan barely had time to hide behind a stack of storage crates before the door slammed open. Vakor entered, his reptilian eyes scanning the lab. His sharp claws scraped against the metal floor as he walked forward. "I know you're here, human," Vakor growled. Ethan held his breath. He knew he couldn't fight the alien in direct combat. If Vakor found him, it was over. The Acceleri prince stepped deeper into the lab, his claws tapping against a metal console. His eyes narrowed at an open display screen. It showed Ethan's work, schematics of a weapon so advanced that no alien had ever conceived it. Vakor's breath caught. What is this? His expression shifted from anger to something else. For the first time in his life, Vakor felt fear. Ethan knew he had to act fast. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small pulse emitter, a device he had designed himself. With a flick of his fingers, he activated it. Instantly, The lights flickered. The security droids outside glitched. The cameras froze. Vakor turned just as Ethan moved. Before the alien could react, Ethan had slipped past him, sprinting toward the door. Vakor lunged, but his body locked up, paralyzed by the emitter's temporary energy disruption. He could only watch as Ethan disappeared down the corridor. By the time Vakor regained control, Ethan was gone. Back in his dorm room, Ethan studied the stolen data. His hands moved quickly, sketching out blueprints on a holographic tablet. The galaxy saw humans as weak. The Academy saw them as jokes. That was fine, because soon Ethan would show them how wrong they were. Ethan sat in his dorm room, the lights dimmed. His fingers moved across the holographic screen, sketching intricate blueprints. Each line, each calculation brought him closer to something unstoppable. He had studied every alien weapon in the Academy's restricted research center. The so-called advanced technology of the Galactic Empires was flawed. Energy shields had blind spots. Plasma cannons overheated under stress. Warships had predictable movement patterns. But his weapon, the one taking shape on his screen, had no weaknesses. It was small, compact, but deadly. It didn't rely on brute force like the aliens' weapons. It used smart energy disruption, something no species had ever thought of. And once it was complete, everything would change. Across the Academy, Vakor paced inside the war hall, his claws tapping against the cold metal floor. He had spent the last 2 hours reviewing the stolen blueprints Ethan had left behind in the research center. At first, he thought the human had been modifying an alien weapon. But the more he studied it, the more he realized the truth. This wasn't a modification. It was a completely new kind of weapon. And that terrified him. Vakor had always believed humans were weak, that they would never match the power of the great galactic races. But if one human, just a child, could design something this dangerous, what else were they capable of? He needed answers, and he knew exactly where to find them. Ethan was so deep in his calculations that he didn't hear the door slam open. Vakor stood in the doorway, his reptilian eyes burning with intensity. Ethan barely had time to react before Vakor grabbed him by the collar and lifted him off the ground. "What did you create?" Vakor's voice was low, controlled, but underneath, Ethan could hear the fear. Ethan didn't flinch. "Something better than what you have." Vakor's grip tightened. "You don't understand what you're doing, human. That blueprint, if it's real, could disrupt the entire balance of power in the galaxy." Ethan smirked. "That's the idea." Vakor stared at him, his expression shifting between anger and something else. Respect. But before Vakor could say another word, the alarm system blared. Unauthorized activity detected. Ethan's heart pounded. The Academy had discovered his security breach. He had minutes before the guards arrived. And then, the door behind Vakor slammed shut. The locking mechanism engaged. Ethan had activated the security lockdown remotely, trapping them both inside. Vakor's eyes widened. "What are you doing?" Ethan's voice was calm. "Buying myself time." He turned back to his screen, fingers moving rapidly. If he wanted to escape the Academy alive, he had to finish the final phase of his blueprint now. Because soon, the entire Galactic Council would know about his existence. And they wouldn't be laughing anymore. The Academy's security alarm continued to blare, flashing red lights across the corridors. Every student and instructor had fled the hallways, clearing the way for the elite security force. Ethan didn't have much time. He worked fast, his fingers moving across the holographic console. His prototype weapon was almost complete, but almost wasn't good enough. Behind him, Vakor stood still, his reptilian eyes locked onto the screen. Conflicted. Ethan could feel it. The alien wanted to stop him, but at the same time, he was curious. That curiosity was the only reason Ethan was still breathing. "I don't get it," Vakor muttered. "Why are you doing this? You could have just kept your head down, learned our ways, followed the rules." Ethan let out a short laugh. "Rules? Your kind made the rules, and you made sure humans would always be at the bottom. Vakor opened his mouth to argue, but before he could, heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. The guards had arrived. Ethan's heart pounded. His weapon was 95% complete. Just a little more time. Bang! The door shook as something massive slammed into it. The security team was trying to break in. Ethan clenched his teeth. "Not yet," he whispered, frantically finishing the last coding sequences. Another bang. The metal door dented inward. They had seconds before the guards got through. Vakor's claws twitched. He looked at Ethan, then at the door. He had a choice to make, and he made it. With a deep growl, Vakor spun around and braced himself against the entrance. Ethan's fingers froze. "What are you doing?" Vakor didn't look back. "Buying you time." Ethan was stunned for half a second. Then he refocused and finished the final sequence. The blueprint was ready. A single small device materialized in front of him, generated from the Academy's nanoforge. It looked harmless, a sleek, palm-sized sphere. But inside, it held something the galaxy had never seen before, a weapon that didn't destroy. It erased. Ethan grabbed the device and bolted. Behind him, the door finally gave way, a group of heavily armed guards pouring in. Vakor lunged at them, his claws slashing through armor. He wasn't trying to kill, just stall them. Ethan didn't waste the opportunity. He dashed toward the ventilation shaft, pried it open, and slipped inside just as the guards overpowered Vakor. The last thing he heard before he disappeared into the shadows was Vakor's voice. "Run, human, and don't get caught." Ethan gritted his teeth. He wouldn't. Because now he had exactly what he needed to change everything. Ethan crawled through the narrow ventilation shaft, his heart pounding. Every breath felt too loud, every movement too slow. Below him, the Academy was in chaos. Guards stormed through the hallways. Security drones hovered, scanning for movement. Loudspeakers blared. "All students remain in your dorms. A high-priority fugitive is on the loose." Ethan smirked. Fugitive. All this, just because he had built something better than they had. But he didn't have time to be proud. He had to get out before they found him. Back in the security hall, Vakor was on his knees, his wrists bound by energy cuffs. Blood dripped from his mouth. The guards had beaten him, but his expression remained calm. A tall figure entered the room. Commander Xeltan, head of Academy security. His golden armor gleamed under the red emergency lights. Xeltan studied Vakor, then spoke in a cold, sharp voice. "You let the human escape." Vakor didn't answer. Xeltan's mandibles twitched in frustration. "Do you have any idea what he stole?" That device, his invention, could undo centuries of warfare. If it falls into the wrong hands, entire fleets could be wiped from existence. Vakor let out a weak laugh. "Maybe that's what you're afraid of." Xeltan's eyes narrowed. "Where is he going?" Vakor spat blood onto the floor. "Find him yourself." Xeltan growled in frustration. He turned to his guards. "Send a broadcast to every ship in orbit. Seal the planet. Nothing gets in or out." Ethan reached the end of the ventilation shaft and kicked open the exit hatch. He dropped down into a storage bay, landing in a crouch. Rows of cargo crates were stacked high, and in the far corner, he spotted exactly what he needed, a small transport shuttle. He sprinted toward it, but the moment he reached the controls, the bay doors slammed shut behind him. A deep artificial voice echoed from the walls. "Unauthorized access detected. Lockdown engaged." Ethan cursed. He didn't have time for this. He yanked open a maintenance panel and started bypassing the security protocols. His fingers moved fast, but not fast enough. Outside, he heard heavy footsteps approaching. They had found him. Ethan took a deep breath. He had one chance. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the device, the one he had built. It was time to see if it really worked. He pressed his thumb against the activation pad. The device hummed softly. A pulse of invisible energy rippled through the room. The security locks flickered. And then, just like that, the entire system shut down. The doors unlocked. The alarms went silent. The cameras blinked off. For exactly 15 seconds, Ethan was completely invisible to the Academy's security network. He didn't waste a second. He threw himself into the pilot's seat and ignited the engines. Just as the first guards burst into the hangar, the shuttle lifted off. Ethan punched the thrusters. The ship shot forward, racing toward the upper atmosphere. From the command tower, Zeltan watched the shuttle break through the clouds. He clenched his fists. The human was getting away. Unless... Zeltan turned to his officers. Activate the orbital defense grid. Shoot him down. The warships in orbit received the order. Cannons locked onto Ethan's shuttle, targeting systems calculating the perfect shot. Ethan saw the warning signals on his dashboard. A dozen warships had him locked in their sights. He had no weapons, no shields strong enough to survive a direct hit. But he had his mind. And that was enough. He tapped the device again. Another pulse of energy spread through space. For a moment, every targeting system failed. The warships flickered on the radar, their computers rebooting in confusion. Ethan's ship slipped right through the blockade. The galaxy's most advanced military systems had just been bypassed by a kid from Earth. He grinned. Now the real game was about to begin. The stars stretched endlessly before Ethan as his shuttle sped through deep space. He had escaped the Academy, but he wasn't safe yet. A warning light flashed red on his dashboard. Incoming pursuit signals DTECTE. Ethan gritted his teeth. They were still after him. Behind him, warships were closing in fast, their engines burning like blue comets in the darkness. They had recovered from his trick. And now, they were hunting him down. Ethan glanced at his hacked navigation system. He had plotted a course toward the outskirts of the galaxy, where no major factions controlled space. If he could just reach the asteroid belt of Euros, he might be able to lose them. But getting there wouldn't be easy. Back at the Academy, Commander Zeltan stood in the war room, watching the chase unfold on a holographic star map. Ethan's shuttle was fast, but the pursuing warships were faster. "Close the noose," Zeltan ordered, his voice sharp. "Cut off all escape routes." His officers worked quickly, sending commands to nearby fleets. A net of warships moved into position, boxing Ethan in. Zeltan's mandibles curled into a grim smile. The human has nowhere left to run. Ethan felt the pressure building. His ship rocked as the first warning shots zipped past him, streaks of red plasma lighting up the darkness. Come on," he muttered, pushing the engines to their limit. The asteroid field was dead ahead, a massive cluster of floating rock and debris, a perfect place to lose pursuers. But then, ALERT, blockade ETECTED ahead. Ethan's stomach dropped. More warships were waiting for him, blocking his only escape path. A cold realization hit him. They had outmaneuvered him. He was trapped. On the flagship of the pursuing fleet, Admiral Tovak, a high-ranking auxiliary officer, watched his target approach the blockade. "Commander Zeltan, we have the human," he said over the comms. "Shall we destroy his ship?" Zeltan's voice crackled through. "No, capture him alive. His weapon is too dangerous to be lost in the wreckage." Admiral Tovak nodded. "Understood." He turned to his gunners. "Prepare the ion nets. Disable his ship." Ethan's hands flew over the controls. His options were running out. His weapon had given him an edge, but it wasn't a shield. If the ion nets hit him, his systems would shut down, and he'd be helpless. He needed another trick. Something they wouldn't expect. His eyes darted to the asteroid field. A plan formed in his mind. It was risky. It was crazy. But it was his only shot. Taking a deep breath, Ethan cut his engines completely. His shuttle went dark, drifting through space. The enemy ships hesitated. What is he doing? Admiral Tovak frowned. Is his ship failing? Ethan's shuttle floated silently, its momentum carrying it toward the asteroids. Then, at the very last second, he reactivated full thrusters. His ship veered sharply, diving straight into the asteroid field at full speed. The warships tried to follow, but they were too big, too slow. Ethan weaved through the deadly debris, dodging massive rocks that spun wildly in zero gravity. Behind him, the pursuing ships struggled, their shields sparking as smaller asteroids crashed into them. Ethan's ship narrowly slipped between two colliding asteroids, while one of the pursuing warships wasn't so lucky. It slammed into the rock, exploding into a fireball. Admiral Tovak cursed loudly. The human was getting away again. Zeltan watched from the academy. His expression darkened. Clever, he muttered, but not enough. He turned to his officers. Send out a galactic bounty. Every mercenary, every pirate, every bounty hunter will now be searching for that human. One of his officers hesitated. But sir, placing a bounty that large will attract dangerous people. Zeltan's eyes burned coldly. I don't care. He looked at the star map again. Wherever he runs, someone will be waiting for him. Ethan's ship finally burst out of the asteroid field, leaving the chaos behind. He allowed himself a small smile. He had escaped. For now. But then his ship's warning system blared again. New 3 DETTT. Ethan's face fell as he saw the latest alert. A bounty had been placed on his head. A galactic-wide bounty. And now, every hunter, pirate, and outlaw in the galaxy would be coming for him. He exhaled slowly. This just keeps getting better. Ethan barely had time to catch his breath. His ship had just escaped the asteroid field, but now his screen was filled with alerts. The bounty on his head was spreading across the galaxy. Pirates, mercenaries, smugglers. They were all coming for him. He checked the bounty details. Wanted alive. Reward 50 million Suridates. Ethan swallowed hard. That was more money than most people saw in a lifetime. For that price, entire fleets would be hunting him. His fingers tightened on the controls. If he wanted to survive, he had to stay ahead of them. And he had to do it fast. Across the galaxy, the bounty was already causing chaos. On a pirate-controlled moon, a group of heavily armed hunters gathered around a glowing screen. 50 million credits. One of them, a massive armored reptilian, grinned. For one human kid. A lean, sharp-eyed bounty hunter tapped the screen. Not just any kid. This one built a weapon powerful enough to scare the Galactic Council. The reptilian chuckled. Then let's go find him before someone else does. They boarded their blackened warship, engines roaring to life. Soon, dozens of bounty hunters all over the galaxy were doing the same. Ethan's ship hurtled through space, heading toward the fringes of the galaxy. He knew he couldn't just keep running forever. He needed a plan, and he needed help. There was only one place left he could go. He punched in coordinates. Destination: the hidden human colony. If there were still humans out there, they might be his only hope. But first, he had to survive the next few hours, because his pursuers had already found him. The first attack came without warning. A laser blast rocked his ship, sending alarms blaring. Ethan gritted his teeth, gripping the controls as he rolled the ship to avoid the next shot. His scanners pinged rapidly. 3 bounty hunter ships were closing in. They were faster and better armed. One of them hailed him. A deep, crackling voice filled the cockpit. Human, power down your engines. You're worth more alive, but we don't mind collecting a corpse. Ethan's heart pounded. They were toying with him. He had to turn the tables. Fast. The bounty hunters moved in, their weapons locking on. Ethan's mind raced. He couldn't outgun them. But maybe he could outthink them. He flipped a switch, activating his prototype cloaking device, a trick he had designed himself. For a few crucial seconds, his ship vanished from their scanners. What? Where did he go? one of the hunters growled. Ethan used those seconds to loop behind them, diving straight toward the nearest asteroid field. The moment his ship reappeared, he hit full thrusters, rocketing toward the deadly debris. The bounty hunters followed, firing wildly. But Ethan was faster, more precise. He zigzagged between asteroids, leading them deeper and deeper into the chaotic field. One of the hunters was too slow. A massive rock smashed into his ship, sending it spinning out of control before it exploded. The other two hesitated. Ethan smirked. "Yeah, keep following me," he muttered. "See how that works out for you." The battle raged on, but Ethan had the advantage now. Using the asteroid field, he lured the hunters into a trap, making them crash into debris or collide with each other. Within minutes, only one hunter remained, and he was angry. "You're clever, human," the hunter snarled over the radio. "But you can't run forever." Ethan narrowed his eyes. He wasn't planning to. With a final risky maneuver, he dove straight toward the largest asteroid, then pulled up at the last second. The last bounty hunter wasn't fast enough. His ship smashed into the rock, bursting into flames. Ethan exhaled sharply. He had won. But the real fight was still ahead. More bounty hunters would come, and the galaxy was closing in. He set course for the hidden human colony, his mind racing with what came next. If humanity had any last hope, he was about to find it. Or die trying. Ethan's ship drifted silently toward the hidden coordinates. His hands trembled on the controls. If this place didn't exist, if it was just a myth, he was dead. Behind him, the galaxy was hunting him down. Ahead of him, a mystery waited. He just hoped it wasn't empty space. As he approached, his sensors picked up something strange. The space around him looked normal, just stars and darkness. But his ship wasn't moving normally. There was a pull, like invisible hands grabbing him. His warning lights flashed red. Gravity field detected. Ethan's stomach lurched. He wasn't flying anymore. Something was pulling him in. He reached for the thrusters, trying to break free. But nothing worked. The ship wasn't responding. It was too late to escape. Ethan braced himself as his ship was dragged toward nothingness. Then, out of the darkness, they appeared. Massive warships. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. They had been hidden behind a powerful cloaking field, invisible to the galaxy. But now, they were awake. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. These weren't just any ships. They were human ships. Old, but deadly. Weapons larger than anything he had ever seen lined their hulls. Engines glowed with impossible energy. These weren't just ships. They were monsters. And they were alive again. Ethan's ship was pulled into a docking bay. The second he landed, his cockpit opened on its own. Bright lights blinded him. Then shadows moved. Figures approached, their boots echoing on metal floors. Humans. Real, living humans. But these weren't ordinary people. They wore old military uniforms, their faces hard and serious. They had been waiting. For him. A tall, gray-haired man stepped forward, eyes piercing. "You've led the galaxy right to us, boy," he said. His voice was heavy with warning. Ethan swallowed hard. This was going to be complicated. They took him to a massive command center deep inside the fortress. Screens showed galactic maps, enemy fleets, and bounty hunter movements. The humans here had never been gone. They had been watching, waiting for the right time. Ethan sat in front of the gray-haired man, who introduced himself. "I'm Commander Voss," he said. "And you've done something interesting." Ethan nodded slowly. "My weapon," he said. "I terrified the galaxy." Voss finished for him. "Yes, we noticed." The commander leaned forward. "You changed everything, kid." Voss gestured to the giant warships outside. "These ships were supposed to stay buried," he said. "The galaxy believed we were gone, and we let them believe it. Ethan's mind spun. You mean humans were never actually wiped out? Voss smiled grimly. No, but we let them think so. Ethan couldn't believe it. Why? Because we were waiting, Voss said, for the right moment. If we revealed ourselves too soon, we'd be crushed before we were ready. Ethan realized how dangerous this place was. A hidden human fortress, a fleet of impossible power. And now, because of him, the galaxy knew humans were still here. Alarms screamed. A soldier rushed in. Sir, enemy fleets incoming. Ethan's heart pounded. They had found him. And now, they had found the last human stronghold. Commander Voss's face hardened. It was only a matter of time. Ethan stood up. This is my fault, he said. I brought them here. Voss shook his head. No, you woke us up. He turned to his officers. Launch the fleet. Ethan's eyes widened. You're going to fight. Voss smiled coldly. No, we're going to end this. The hidden fleet erupted from the fortress, breaking through the cloaking field. The enemy fleets didn't stand a chance. Laser blasts ripped through the darkness, cutting enemy ships apart like paper. Ethan watched in shock. These warships were unlike anything he had ever seen. Technology far beyond the galaxy's understanding. Weapons that ignored shields. Engines that moved faster than light. For the first time in history, the galaxy wasn't hunting humans anymore. Now, humans were hunting them. The battle didn't last long. The enemy fleets tried to retreat, but the human ships pursued them. One by one, enemy commanders surrendered. The bounty on Ethan disappeared instantly. Fear spread across the stars. The galaxy had learned a new lesson. Humans were not weak. They were not gone. And they were not to be underestimated ever again. In the aftermath, Ethan stood beside Voss, watching the last enemy ships flee. You changed history, kid, Voss said. Ethan shook his head. No, we did. Voss smirked. Well then, genius, what do we do next? Ethan grinned. Let's build something even bigger. Voss laughed. And somewhere in the stars, the galaxy shuddered in fear. The age of humanity had begun again.